text of these trades for us to put out good information.
Yeah, so, I mean, I would love to be able to read more sort of, I guess, like building porn, but instead I'm like reading, like, the Bibles.
The IRC.
That's an interesting analogy.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding podcast, our weekly discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. I'm joined by Design Editor Kylie Jacques.
Hello.
Deputy Editor Matt Milham.
Hi.
And Producer Jeff Rose.
Howdy.
What was that noise you just made?
Hi.
Please email your questions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com, and please include a mailing address so we can send you a sticker. You can find previous podcasts and check out the show notes at finehomebuilding.com/podcast.
Your sticker program is humming along.
It is. That's probably one of the most significant contributions I've made to this company. You're not disagreeing.
No, people love it.
Oh, boy, we had some great feedback this time. It's been a while since we recorded, right? More than a
Feels
week?
like
2.5 weeks.
Yeah, wow.
Man.
So first off, it's been a while since we have been to the Builders Show, but I wanted to share this with y'all. This is from Mikee, who's one of our listeners. He says, hey guys, it was fantastic meeting you all at IBS. You really are the real deal, as your podcast reflects. Thanks, Mikee. There's a photo of us there. Look at the Builder Show.
Yeah, he's
Where
a
are you?
very cool guy. I don't know. I guess didn't pull me into that. But I did enjoy talking with him at length.
It was
Yeah.
fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We met
Fun
all
guy.
kinds of cool people.
I thought what
Yeah.
was so neat about him is that he's not even in the profession. He's
No.
just interested in it.
And he made the trek to Las
Yeah,
Vegas because
exactly.
he's so into it. That's-
Exactly.
I know.
I love that.
We have great listeners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This comes from Eric. I look forward to listening to your podcast on my commute. It seems to be a bit less of a fine air sealing podcast these days than it was in the past. I don't know how to respond to that except to say that we should try harder.
It's just the questions we get.
Yeah.
I'm happy to steer people away from that onto other topics if we can.
Yeah, but how are we going to use our little spinning wheel?
Yeah, that's.
I
Did you
forgot
ever make
about
that? Do we have it?
Yeah.
Oh,
Have you seen this?
We got to get Melinda on
I've seen a
that.
picture of it. Do we actually have the
Oh,
wheel?
it's a computer animation of
Oh,
the
okay.
spinning wheel.
Okay.
That sounds like a
I'm
song or
in
something.
favor of an actual wheel next to you that we can.
Yeah, I want to hear the like.
tick, 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 tick.
Yeah, exactly.
I think actually, Jeff, you added some sound effects to it, right?
No.
But we can.
We
Just
can.
screaming.
Eric says, I listened with interest to your discussion about the ethics of doing an energy retrofit on a monstrously large home. A few episodes later, there was a question about doing a retrofit on a cabin so that the water wouldn't have to be turned off and drained every time the owner wanted to use the house in the winter. I was surprised to not hear any discussion about whether this would be a waste of energy, the cost and embodied energy necessary to make a part-time second home tight enough to leave the water turned on and heated for the potential weeks that no one is there seems like a similar waste as making a grotesquely large primary home energy efficient. That said, I do see the appeal of having a modern running water for the weekend visits. The idea of a smaller core that is well insulated and heated for the utilities and water seems like a good trade-off if the existing floor plan makes it feasible.
Yeah.
Well, of course.
Yeah, and I mean, what people may not understand is that a lot of times we're just like thinking out loud here. We haven't really given a lot of considered thought.
You
necessarily
think they
to
would be
these
surprised
things.
to learn this?
I don't think they'll be surprised, but it's not like I think Rob had come up with the idea of like having like a core that just sort of kept everything.
That makes sense. So you have this
Yeah,
plumbing centrally located. You heat that space,
Yeah,
whether
and-
it's one or two floors or whatever.
right.
And you leave the rest of the house go cold.
Yeah, which seemed like a good idea, but I mean,
It's contrary to the design of most modern floor plans, though, right? Like, people don't want little rooms with a sink in it. They want a big room with a sink in it.
right. Yeah, so I mean, it's a conundrum. But you can't stop people from having second homes and wanting to
And
protect
water.
the plumbing from exploding. and ruining
Exactly.
the house.
And, of course, there's an energy penalty associated with having a second home. And
Period,
the ethics
right.
of that are debatable, but I sure would like a second home.
Yeah, use solar, and you don't really have like the carbon penalty that you would have.
Yeah. So, like
With
in
other heating
Vermont,
systems.
a lot of folks have a hunting cabin, right? And it's heated with a wood stove. It may or may not have water at all.
Right.
It may have no power. It might be kerosene lamps or
That's my idea of a second home.
That's cool, right? I can't imagine there's a lot of embodied energy in that.
No.
Probably not. Go camping. Go camping instead. Island tent.
Okay.
Now that's different.
I'm getting a little too old to like camping. I go because it's an affordable way to see cool places, but
Yeah.
I like sleeping too.
It's good for the back. Nice hard surface.
Yeah. And I gave up my Thermarest a couple decades ago. Now I have like a big 4-inch thick air mattress, and that's still not doing it for me.
Count.
You don't think that counts as camping?
Yeah, I don't know.
You still go backpacking there, campy girl?
No, those days are over for me too. Yeah, my hips hurt.
Mark writes in, several episodes back, the topic of welding inspection came up. I'm a welding and machining inspector in the nuclear pressure vessel industry.
So cool.
What does that mean?
I know,
He makes nuclear reactors, right?
Yeah, that was
Sounds like it.
That's how I read it.
Oh, it's probably the steam, like the nuclear power is converted to steam.
Right.
Yeah.
To spin a turbine.
Yeah. So I'm guessing
And
it's
so
that part.
but
Maybe not.
it's where the
There may be
water is
more
turned into steam.
parts to it. Yeah.
So anyway, he says our welds have to hold up. I guess they do. And although the welds done in home building won't be as critical, I wanted to offer a few tips to those who don't have much experience welding or inspecting welds, so you know what to look at. So I'm not going to read all these things, but it's a great list of items that talk about what a good weld looks like, how to get a good weld, and then how to test it with a low-tech method. So go to the podcast page and check that out if you're interested. And
I was just reading about rivet construction on bridges. Are you guys familiar with that?
yeah, so that was the way to build bridges
Yeah.
back in the early 20th century, right?
Just found myself reading about that when this guy's email came in. So,
What did you think about this? Was it interesting?
well, I love the look of it. Yeah,
yeah.
I think it's really interesting. It's a complicated process for making those rivets.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't. Don't ask me to explain it to you. I hate when you do that. But that's how they used to do it, and it's hard to find people who know how to do it anymore.
Yeah, because it's been replaced by other fabricating methods.
But you can still see a lot of examples of them,
oh, yeah.
and they're in great shape, generally speaking.
You know what I learned about in a training with regard to riveted construction?
What?
Is that every one of those rivets on a bridge or whatever has to be painted with a brush by hand, because if you spray it, the rivet creates a shadow that it doesn't get fully coated. So in order to ensure that it's fully coated with paint, somebody has to paint
Wow.
every single rivet.
That's
Can you imagine?
insane.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Side note.
So if we ever need to change careers, you know all you need to know about
I'm going to
rivet
get on
painting.
a riveting gang.
That's all you need to know.
Who is this? This is from Larry from Ontario. Enjoy your podcast every episode. We are building a new cottage here in Canada, but due to some bedrock in the way, we are delayed, and now the very cold weather has delayed us further and prevented us from putting in our footings, ICF foundation, and the rest. So I'm always looking for a building fix until the thaw. Regarding number 228, when I share Patrick's beef with stacking washer and dryer combos, this has to be one of the worst engineered consumer products ever. They're not designed to be serviced in place. A replacement unit won't stack with a survivor, and they fail with what most would consider normal use.
I love how you first do it as the survivor. Is that a common phrase?
I haven't heard that, so I was complaining that like you can't just replace a dryer
Yeah.
if you have, because it's
Yeah,
never going
I've
to
been
fit
through
on
it.
the yeah. So he says, at home, I already had 2 spare dryers in storage from 2 washer failures. When the 3rd washer failed, the repair service wanted to charge for 2 servicemen to deal with the stacked unit because it's heavy,
Yeah.
right? You got to lift this one unit off to get to the workings of the other one. I have a son. I solved this problem once and for all with a 3/4-inch MDF shelf above the front-loading washer with cutouts for plumbing and electrical. It sits on 1x2 cleats on the sides. The dryer is placed on top. A bit of routing and enamel spray paint to finishes it off, and it will never be an issue again. Before I position the shelf, I check the common unit sizes of washers and dryers to position it at the correct height for a future replacement.
So
What a
smart.
great idea.
Yeah, right? That was a great idea.
I was a little bit surprised that the MDF could handle that, but
So what he said elsewhere in the email is that because the dryer itself is structural. Its weight is going on the outside, close to the cleats, where it's not going to be affected by the sag.
Yeah,
I would especially be worried about the MDF around hot laundry equipment because it's humid and could start to sag. But plywood would also be great. But that's a great idea.
When you say
Larry.
the dryer is structural, do you just mean that the weight of it is on the sides of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's how it works in the stacked unit. It's
got to be
it's
that
going
way.
down the sides.
Right. Of course.
Because the top is flimsy. You had an interesting situation. What was that, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
You
An
emailed
electrical fix.
Rodney and I.
Yeah.
What are you laughing about? Art
Because these
director.
guys are useless to me. Yeah, that's not who wound up coming. His voice mailbox was
just
full.
tell us what you were looking for an electrician.
Yeah,
Because why?
half my house didn't have electricity. Literally half of my house did not have electricity.
That seems like a problem.
Yeah, so
how did you notice first?
well, nothing was turning on.
Like, what was the first thing you flipped on and said, why is this not working?
Well, this has been a situation that's been kind of dodgy for a while, and then one day it just stopped working altogether. And it
When
would
the
be
fire
like
started.
one thing would work, the other wouldn't. Yeah, I'm lucky that I had somebody come. It seems like, judging from the black and crispies behind the outlet,
That's really frightening.
I know.
mean, like, that's...
He said it was something that had been happening over time. That's why it was spotty for a while there.
Sure.
And the wiring itself is just bizarre. It's like this switch turns off, it turns on and off a few things. It's like, anyway.
So we should tell folks, when you have bad electrical connections,
Yeah.
You get a lot of resistance, right?
Mm-hmm.
The electricity is trying to jump from one conductor to another, and that creates heat.
Yeah.
And it'll melt wiring. It'll melt wire nuts. I've seen like wire nuts that were completely burned up. And it's very dangerous. That's how fires start.
Yeah, you could tell there was some fire reaction in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was really impressed with this guy. It cost me $215. He was there for an hour and 20 minutes. I didn't talk to him too much because he couldn't work and talk at the same time, which I wanted to follow him along, follow him around, and so I just sort of spied on him from my loft. But
You have to
so
set
yeah, I
up
got
some
that
cameras
fixed.
next time.
I felt like that was a fair price.
Yeah.
For all the work he did. He did a lot of work.
Yep. And oh my God, the safety to your house
Exactly.
and your life.
You
Like
know what was kind of funny?
$200?
Right, yeah. He went downstairs to, of course, turn off the, the main. And it was so surprising to realize how thin and cheap my house is. Because we were just talking through the floor like he was in the room. So that was enlightening. I'd never talked to anybody in my basement from my living room before.
Did it give you an appreciation to the work of electricians?
Yes.
Yeah.
I wished I had looked more carefully at what he was doing, but it would have cost me a lot more money.
I should have been an electrician. I've said it before.
I think they do well, right? They make good money, I hope.
They should.
Yeah.
It's important work.
It
really is important work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my saga.
So is it your father-in-law or your dad that's an electrician?
My dad's an electrician. Was an electrician. He's been long retired, but yeah.
What did he work on? Residential stuff or?
No, he did commercial. So, he's still useful in a residential setting. Whenever
sure.
I've got problems,
Sure.
he can help me figure it out.
The
but-
stuff is largely the same.
Yeah, although he was working on, big industrial equipment and stuff like
That's
that.
not the same.
So it's not quite the same.
But you grew up kind of, you have a feel
seeing
for it, right?
Yeah, he would do all the plumbing and electrical and stuff in the house because he basically worked electrical maintenance at IBM for decades. So
On the line?
No, basically just like servicing the buildings, sort
Cool.
of like a building maintenance mechanic.
You can imagine they must have had dozens of people on the maintenance team who had all different manner of specialties, right? When you have like dozens of buildings with tens of thousands of employees, right?
Yeah, yep.
Wow. Does he ever talk longingly about that work or?
I think he didn't enjoy it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The corporate thing?
I don't know what it was that he didn't enjoy, but yeah, he was happy to retire. He retired relatively early, so he's been out of it for a long time, and I don't think he ever looks back and says, I wish I were still doing that.
Yeah. Sometimes it's like that.
Yeah.
What about you, Patrick? You got some sharp cabinetry in your...
Yeah, so I dove back into the cabinet realm. I think I told you all recently I bought my pre-finished plywood, and the quality compared to the crap I was buying at the home center makes the work so much easier. I love the fact that the boxes are completely finished when you're done building them. Some people I've heard, this is the first time I've worked with pre-finished material. I've heard some people caution me about it's going to get scratched, it's going to get damaged, but like I didn't find that to be the case. But I'm also cutting the panels, the blanks with the track saw, so you're not pushing it over a table saw. You put the track down gently, and I was careful handling it. And boy, I'm sure happy with how it's been going along.
Yeah.
So now I got to make doors, which is a whole other kettle of fish.
Have you decided on what you're going to do? Stub tenons?
All right, so we were talking about this a little bit this morning, right? And I'm loath to ask my buddy Matt to borrow his
again
his Domino Festool loose tenon machine.
Dude, you just got to
make
get one of
doors.
those. You long
Oh my
after
God,
it.
Kylie!
You
It is
long after it.
$1,400.
But you're going to be using it a lot, right? Or not?
Not if I can help it.
Yeah.
I just seen you pining over this tool for a while now.
It really is a fantastic machine, and there's really nothing like it.
Do you have one, Matt?
No.
It's a rarity because of how expensive it is.
And you don't use it all that often.
Well, if you make boxes or doors, it's super handy. If you make like office furniture, like I hear people use it for everything, making custom doors, because it's so fast.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem to be any trade-offs with it.
What about biscuits?
So you're
Not
limited with
quite
biscuits
strong.
for stiles and rails on cabinet doors. Like the really little ones, I don't think they're strong enough. Especially for my doors are going to be 44 inches tall, I believe they are.
But
So
how wide?
20 inches, I believe.
That's pretty big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this stuff needs to be sturdy. And you suggested,
Especially since you're sleeping under it.
especially since you're sleeping under it, you suggested pocket screws this morning. But
No, I didn't. That definitely wasn't me.
who was that?
That was me.
That was Jeff said pocket screws. Sorry, Jeff. I just hate how they look on the
Yeah.
inside. And admittedly, once you close the door, they go away. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love pocket screws too, but not where you see them.
Yeah.
I could pocket screw in Bondo, right?
Yeah.
They have little filler plugs that you can put in.
They look even more wacky than
Yeah.
the screws. Like
Yeah.
I say to myself when I see it, like, what happened here? What is this?
Paint the back of the door.
That's the solution.
Yeah.
And they're going to get painted anyway.
Well, there you go. You never see it.
So is it significantly more expensive to get the pre-finished?
Way.
Like, yeah.
So those were $110 a sheet, which I was paying retail with low quantity. So I paid about as much as you probably could. The last maple plywood I bought was $60-some a sheet. So it comes at a fair premium, but worth every penny to me.
Yeah.
What have you been doing?
I bought a little bit of plywood over the weekend. I started working on some cabinets for my breezeway because my house doesn't really have much in the way of storage. And the breezeway is just a disaster with all kinds of stuff that gets dropped in there.
Cool.
Because there's nowhere to put anything else, like all the cleaning supplies,
Yeah.
all kinds of root vegetables and gardening supplies.
Right next to each
and,
other.
Yeah.
That is quite a mashup of stuff.
Yeah,
I
they're not
gotta
exactly
say.
next to each other, but like recyclables and all this other
Yeah.
stuff because there's
Your
not a
mud,
lot of
it's
space.
your mud room,
Yeah, it's
essentially.
basically a mudroom / like landing area for
Junk.
anything that gets dragged in the house. And just trying to organize things a little bit.
So what are you making?
Various things, like a sort of a shoe rack, sort of a drop zone cabinet that will like house all those root vegetables and things that get left
Cool.
out there. Some hooks and stuff for keys, a bench to actually put your shoes on and off.
That's
Love to have
awesome.
And then
that.
some other cabinets on the other side for the cleaning supplies and all that stuff. So
What kind of room do you have to work with in there?
it's like 12 by 26
Oh,
maybe.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's a
it's a-
huge space.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
pretty big space. It's concrete floor.
What's is it glassed in?
It has a French door on one end and 2 windows, I think.
Oh, okay.
No windows. Just a big French door.
And it's what
then
connects
2
your
windows
garage
and a
to your
door on the other
house,
side.
to your
yeah,
kitchen.
and then there's a kitchen door on one side and
Okay.
a garage door on the other.
Gotcha.
So you don't have a lot of wall though, because you have a lot of doors and windows.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the one wall only has the one door to the garage in it, so there's a lot of space on that. And then the other one, because this was an exterior wall on the house side,
Right.
there's a window into the one bathroom,
That's odd.
which is odd.
Yeah.
And then the kitchen door, which used to be like an entry door into the house also. So, yeah.
So how do you break down your plywood?
Track saw also, which I bought at Black Friday. So I haven't had it that long.
And you
This
have the
is like,
Makee cordless.
yeah, I
Yeah.
love it.
I was freaking out about my corded version. That the cord is always in the way.
Yeah. Yeah, the cordless is really nice. The one thing that I don't have is any kind of like a good vacuum. I do have this little portable Ryobi vacuum that I hook into this thing so I can carry around the vacuum while I'm sawing and get rid of all the dust. And that works pretty well, except that I have something in each hand, which is a little weird.
And I find you have to hold down the track sometimes, especially when you get to the end of the piece, right? Right?
I haven't had that, but I could definitely see where it would be helpful to have the other hand
Yeah.
on the wood.
You haven't had
Seems
one
like a-
available, so.
Otherwise,
Seems like
I
a
had-
safety issue.
Well, because I have to stabilize underneath of it so nothing tilts when it gets to
Right.
the end. Otherwise, yeah.
Hence the safety.
Yeah.
I questioned the necessity of I mean, I love cordless tools, right? Everybody does because of the super fast setup. But I wondered about the utility of a cordless track saw. But struggling with the cord makes me think it's worth it for that reason alone.
Yeah.
Just like the last thing you want is you're moving along nice and smooth. You don't want to change your speed, right? Because cut quality is dependent on how consistently you can move the saw and all these things, right? And
Yeah.
then the cord hangs up and you're like stuck.
Yeah. I'm just not buying any more corded tools unless that's the only thing that is available.
Right.
You know,
Boy, I don't think there's any tool made that's the only option
other
anymore.
than like a cabinet saw, maybe. And that's probably coming.
You plug it into your Tesla.
But that was really the reason I got this, because I was looking at cabinet saws and I was like, I don't really want to drop $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 on a
Oh, right.
on a cabinet saw, and I don't really have space for it unless I cleared everything else out of my garage. And I was like, track
Those
saw.
things are huge, right?
It's huge.
Yeah.
And it weighs hundreds of pounds. Like, it's not easy to move. If you
Yeah.
guys ever decide you want to live someplace else, forget about it.
Yeah, and I looked at a couple used ones. I think that even the cheapest of those was like $1,200 or something like that for really what was like a contractor saw, not
Right.
like a job site saw, but a contractor saw.
What's the difference there?
Go ahead.
So the motor, instead of being mounted like under
yeah, I
inside
think
the
we-
cabinet, it's sort of like out the back.
Yeah,
and-
I think we've talked about that.
So,
Okay.
So it's like a big table saw,
Yeah.
but it's like the most portable of a big table
Right,
saw.
got it.
And before like real portable table saws came along, this was a portable table saw.
yeah.
Like you'd see these on home sites, residential construction sites.
Sounds like a great project, Matt.
How far along are you?
Not very. Some of my tools are still here
Right.
from various other shoots and projects that we've been doing here. So I haven't actually gotten to do much. I think I've done.
You got all the materials you need?
I don't think I probably have all the materials. I bought some because I wasn't sure how far I was going to go on all this. I have enough for like the first set of cabinets.
Cool.
But
Where'd you get your plywood?
I got it at one of the box stores.
And what do you think about the quality?
It's fine for the price. It
Yeah.
was
So
about-
what are you paying?
It was a little over $50 a sheet
So
for
that's
3/4
half as much as-
Yeah, for a 3/4 inch
Where'd you
maple.
buy your wood?
So mine came from Conway Hardwoods in Gaylordsville, Connecticut. So they're a hardwood supplier that also sells cabinet plywood.
Yeah.
Great place.
And this stuff is flat, but neither face. I mean, I don't know if it. I think it's supposed to be AC, but the A face is not quite A grade. I would say.
Sub A.
There's some-
For a room
yeah,
like
sub
that,
A.
though,
Well, that was
it's
the thing.
just
It's all getting
functional.
painted. I was like,
Yeah.
I really don't care.
You don't
$50, give
not,
it to me.
Not going to be
Right.
really looking
Yeah.
at it. Yeah.
So how do you build your boxes? Like screws?
Yeah, I've been just pocket screwing this. I also
You know what
had-
I did this time?
What?
15 gauge gun nails. Mm-hmm. Works great.
Yeah.
And then the
fine.
back is really what sturdies it up a lot. I put that in a groove.
Yeah, I did that too.
I roped Liam to help me push in the back into the cabinet box because it was a pretty tight fit. He's like, "You're pushing really hard. It's hurting my stomach."
Actually, I didn't do a groove. I did a rabbit.
Oh,
And then just
okay.
laid it in. Yep.
All right. Wow. Should we get to some questions?
Sure.
So when are you going to make cabinets?
I don't know. I can't say it appeals to me.
Yeah, I can't
Does that
say
make
it would
does,
either.
Does that make me a bad person?
No, it's not fun at work, really. It's just a whole mess of heavy lifting and breaking up sheets of plywood and then carrying things that are
Yeah.
heavy and hard to move and
I'll-
store.
I'll leave that to you guys. I'm impressed that you do it though. I like seeing your work.
The reason I do it, like I said, I don't find it all that enjoyable. Of course, it's satisfying when it's done.
You're
but
economical.
It's really a good bang for the buck.
Well, you've got to feel proud of that bedroom too. You've put a lot of
Yeah, it's
sweat
great.
into that.
It's great.
Sweat equity. Yeah.
All right. So we heard from this is from Chris in Charlotte, North Carolina. Hi, FHB crew. I've heard you lament how bad HGTV shows can be, and I couldn't agree more. I used to watch them when they were the only thing available, but with the explosion of YouTube and streaming services, I've canceled cable and don't miss it in the least. I love the international diversity you can find on Netflix through shows like Grand Designs, and the production values on YouTube channels like Matt Reisinger's can feel just as polished as real TV. You can find most episodes of PBS classics like This Old House for free on their site, and Instagram has exploded with great content from real professionals like Steve Basic Architect.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, other than the fine publications of the Taunton Press, what media do you consume about the craft and science of working on houses? What a great question.
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah.
Jeff, you go first.
Well, I mean, I haven't had regular cable for probably 12 years or so.
Wow.
And so I really don't watch a lot of that stuff. I mean, if I have a specific question, I'll search it out and look at, a few sources till I get a consensus for an answer. But
YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and our stuff, I mean.
Yep.
But, I mean, as far as the HDTV stuff, since most of it's crap, it just drives me crazy. and if it is well done, it just makes me jealous.
Right. What about you,
podcasts?
What about you, Kylie?
Well, I mean, I'm not the how-to. I'm not looking for that kind of information.
But what
right?
do you like to consume?
I like podcasts. So the Modern Craftsman comes to mind for this guy if he's looking. This Old House has a new podcast called Clear Story. It's not how-to information, but it might be of interest to him.
What did you think of that show?
I've only listened to a couple of episodes, and it's a little bit more theoretical than like hands-on stuff. But I find it interesting. Yeah, I'm into it. From what I've gathered so far.
What about magazines and stuff? Do you guys read magazines anymore?
Not really. I'm online more. It's again not how to, but it's like a wormhole for things to research and look into. It's Green Built Alliance. It's a really good site to check out for lots of ideas.
I spend a lot of time reading like construction manuals,
yeah, you do.
ASHRAE handbook, like all kinds of just
Me too.
Really
technical.
Because
in the weeds.
We have to research this stuff, right? And you have to go to the canonical texts of these trades for us to put out good information.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would love to be able to read more sort of, I guess, like building porn, but instead I'm like reading like, the Bibles.
Yeah.
The IRC.
It's an interesting analogy.
The NEC.
Yeah, exactly. NFPA
Do you guys
70.
read magazines anymore? That's an interesting question for
So I subscribe.
Magazine editors.
I subscribe to Hot Rod Magazine, which is going to take me to my. So, the truth is, when I leave this place, I love building and stuff, but the last thing I want to do is read about it. And I do sometimes research stuff like Jeff on YouTube and other sites I trust, like JLC, and on a case by case basis, educate myself on something I need to. But like, my interest with regard to like hands create my creative outlet is I go to the Gearhead segment on YouTube and I watch people try to start old diesel engines like tractors and bulldozers that have been sitting for 2 decades.
Right.
You're such a dork.
I know. And like, I don't know why I find this fascinating, but I do.
Well, you like
and
machinery.
then I watch, it was started by the editors of Hot Rod. It's called Roadkill, and it started out as a web-only, low-budget TV show, but I just enjoy it immensely. They build these crappy hot rods with as little money as possible and enjoy them, and that's what appeals to me about working on cars. Is like I don't want pristine classics. I want to have stuff I can have fun with.
I wonder how Rob would answer this question because he's a media guy.
So I know he's a big fan of the Grand Designs, right?
Yeah.
And you are too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I first found that on YouTube long before I wouldn't say long before I got into building, but before I even went to trade school, when I was just actually looking for stuff on cob construction, and they had done an episode on that.
Yeah.
And that's how you found that show?
Yeah, that's how I
Interesting.
first found that show. Yeah.
That show's a little bit out there, though. Like, the projects that they're working on are not, modest residential.
I mean, it's
They're
in the
like,
name.
Yeah.
Grand Designs.
Exactly,
I mean,
true.
they're like houses are real out there most of the time.
Are there any other Netflix or, streaming network, whatever, Prime, whatever. What am I trying to say?
Yeah.
That have that kind of show? I mean, it seems like of that quality? Because I've seen a number of them. I haven't watched any of them.
I don't know. I haven't looked around enough.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say of that quality. There are definitely other shows. I think I talked about one that was like some British cabin building
right.
show.
Right.
How was that?
It
was that
interesting.
HGTV or?
No, I don't know what it was.
I meant
There's
like
gotta be a
more of that
tiny house.
consumer genre than like actually teaching people
a
how.
little
Right.
bit
Yeah.
more like that. I mean, they showed you some of the stuff, but it didn't really get into exactly how they fabricated things. They would show you.
Most folks don't have the
parts of
patience
it.
for that, right? That's
Yeah.
not what they want.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
You wouldn't be able to do what these people did just from what you saw on TV.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a how-to show.
So at the lunch table a few days ago, I admitted to loving this other show that's on Amazon, and it's called Travels by Narrow Boat, and it chronicles this guy who goes around the canals of England in this boat. Aslan is the name of the boat, and it's fascinating. The infrastructure is from the very early 20th century and the late 19th century. These locks that are made of wooden timbers and stone, and he goes all over the English countryside and into cities on this boat he bought, and it's fascinating.
That sounds fascinating. I like that idea.
And I was surprised that you guys didn't think I was a complete loon for being interested in this.
No, I've been over there and I've seen some of this infrastructure and these boats, and it's really fun. It's like a lifestyle. It's sort of like RVing in the U.S. That's sort of like the same
But it looks
demographic.
way cooler.
Oh, I think
Yeah.
it is way
Most
cooler.
things
yeah.
are.
Yeah. They're not dragging around like a Suzuki Sidekick or something like that behind their like land yacht.
Seeing the infrastructure is amazing. Like, there are bridges that carry the canal over highways, and some of them look like they date to the Romans, right?
Wow.
It's like
Yeah.
crazy stuff.
Cool.
So check that out if you guys are interested in that. Chris has a couple favorites here. He says Grand Designs on Netflix, Matt Reisinger's YouTube channel, RR Building on YouTube. I'm not familiar with that one. This Old House on YouTube. I love This Old House and have since I was a very young person. Like when I was a little kid, I was watching that show and enjoying it very much. Yeah. And they haven't cheapened their brand, I would say. It's like been pretty consistent throughout its history. And
Yeah.
the information is still good. I love how they value knowledgeable tradespeople. Like they emphasize it's important to have smart, experienced people to do work on houses.
Yeah.
So those of you listening, if you have your suggestions for other good home building quality content, please put that on the comments or somewhere, or email us and let us know, and we'll share those with other listeners.
Yeah, especially anything that's web-based or streaming, because like Jeff, I do not have cable.
Yeah,
I
same
think that's
here.
where I'm going, because I don't use it enough to justify what I spend.
Right.
Dear FHB gang, this comes from Matt. Or this is, excuse me, this comes from Tom. Dear FHB gang, I spent many an enjoyable workday listening to you folks on the podcast, marveling that you actually get paid to do it. I don't know quite what he means by that. I marvel at that too.
I'm
Yeah,
glad
I think it's
to
like
get
the
paid.
quality of the information I'm getting from this. It's hard to believe that you're getting paid.
That's what I thought he meant. I've been a residential building contractor in Minnesota for 27 years. About 15 years ago, I moved to rural southeast Minnesota and bought a 150-year-old brick farmhouse with a stone foundation. It's been gutted and remodeled before I bought it, so it's in fine shape. I would like to add a one-story sunroom to it, 16 by 16 feet, and I'm mulling over my foundation options. The addition will have a full basement since there is currently a cellar door leading into the existing basement, so the new basement would have easy access to the house basement. I'm hoping to make the new basement into a legal bedroom by having an egress window. I've never laid block, but I'm up to the task. I'm only 64 years young. But then I have to deal with inside surfaces with insulation, electrical, drywall, etc. I have a sister and brother-in-law who built an all-weather wood foundation for their house about 30 years ago, and all is well with it. The system is easy to build, insulate, and run wiring and hang drywall. Do you have any experience with wood foundations? I plan on pouring the basement slab first and then building the foundation walls on top. What do you think is the best way to waterproof this foundation? And are there any other options I should consider? I'm usually a one-man operation, and I'm not sure if I want to deal with pumping concrete into ICS. Wow. This is a great question. So, first off, do any of us have any experience with wood foundations?
No.
No. Jeff?
No.
Kylie?
I think it's a given.
Yeah.
So no.
Yeah. But it's interesting if you look at
You don't see them all that often either, do you? I mean, I
I've
can't.
never come across one.
Yeah.
Yeah, neither have I. But
And why is that? Let's just ask ourselves that.
It seems like a bad idea.
yeah. Well, I think probably because the preservative treated wood hasn't been around that long.
Right. Since the 80s, right?
Well, maybe a little bit farther back than that, but yeah. I mean, I think these things like wood foundations probably started to become popular maybe, and popular is a relative term, but maybe in the 60s, 70s, somewhere in that era.
I can't quite picture them.
So it's like a framed wall
Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically just a stud wall.
made out of pressure-treated lumber and plywood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there are some very specific details for waterproofing it, right?
Yeah, basically just 6 mil poly. And then you have to like adhere it in places. And there are a lot of details on how to do this. But yeah, polyethylene sheeting is sort of like the main waterproofing for these things on the outside. And then it is nice because you do have a surface to, run
It's
your
just
electrical
building
and
as
stuff.
normal, right?
Yeah, it's basically just building stud walls, and you can put them on top of like a sort of a gravel footing, and then have like a wood footing on top of that. Your wood bottom plate goes on top of, and I don't know. There's a lot of details. There is.
He mentioned something that concerned me. So he's talking
Yeah.
about pouring a slab and then putting the walls, and that's not how it's done.
That is not how it's done,
Yeah.
and I was a little curious about that too.
Because you'd be wicking water right up the wood.
No,
right?
because
Oh.
you need the slab to resist soil pressure at the bottom of the wall. If the
okay.
wall is on top of the slab,
Gotcha.
it doesn't have that effect.
Yeah, I mean, if he's just putting bolts, essentially just bolting the bottom plate to the slab, like
That's not the approved detail, as I
that's
recall.
not the approved detail. No, so you do have
You
to
actually
have
pour
some
the
sort of-
slab after the walls are in place, and that helps resist that soil
Yeah,
pressure.
there's a bunch of different ways that you can handle that, but yeah, putting the bottom plate on top of the of a slab is not a detail that I've seen.
Yeah.
So, especially if you're going to have a full basement, because there's going to be a lot of pressure down there.
So the whole concept has always given me the willies, right? It's like you don't put wood things underground and expect them to last, but these are tested assemblies. It's in the code.
Yeah,
I would also point out that
wood
although
foundations are the first thing mentioned in the code when it talks about materials. Like
Is
if
that
you-
right?
Yeah, if you go to what is it, chapter 4, foundations.
and wood foundations are the
Yeah,
first
it
thing.
says materials, and then wood is the first material that is listed.
That's interesting,
Yeah, because as far as I understand, it hasn't been around as long as concrete.
right?
This detail.
Yeah. How does it get first?
Yeah, how does it jump the line?
Well, I would point out, Tom, you're 64 years young, so if you do the math, your sibling has had theirs for 30 years. That seems long enough to me for Tom.
Yeah,
And I don't mean to be disparaging, but like,
I wonder if he would be able to get the details of how they did it on our house.
so they're in the code book, right?
yeah. Well, the code itself doesn't really have the details, but they refer you to the American Wood Council Permanent Wood Foundation Design Specification, which basically goes through everything you need to do to calculate the size of your studs, the soils that you can actually build these in, because it's not, you really can't build it just anywhere. Like you have to have soils that drain well enough, to keep water away from it
Just
and all this other
to
stuff.
reduce the soil pressure.
Soil pressure and also the amount of water that, is being retained,
I see.
I guess, against it
Sure.
because, water's going to get in there, eventually. You have to have a sump. You have to have all this stuff. Basically, everything gets detailed in order to drain the water that's inevitably going to get in there away.
Right.
Sounds more complicated than another approach that he
it's
could
like
take.
a 54, 56 page document, just the, the wood foundation
Little light
guide.
reading.
Yeah.
I'm going to suggest hire a foundation contractor and do the fun part yourself. Like, I don't know if I'd be one to be laying block it, for days on end, especially if you've never done it before. It's way harder than it looks, I can tell you. Get a concrete company to pour a foundation, or my other suggestion is Superior Wall, which are precast foundations, and that might be a great solution for you.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about the pressure-treated wood foundation?
It seems like an okay thing to me. I don't know. Having never done it, it's intriguing. But there's so many details. I didn't, get the time to really pore over everything that's involved in it. And I was trying to figure out all the, like the lateral restraint and all of that.
And you got to get all that stuff
You
right.
think it would be a lot less expensive
it's
than just getting a
complicated.
pour?
It's less expensive.
Yeah,
It's
that-
perhaps it's greatest attribute.
That's what I would have guessed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's easy for owner builders and people in very remote places to build this way.
Yeah.
Places where you can't get a concrete truck or there's no concrete truck to get, where if you're building on your own. So,
Yeah. But I mean, why can't he just get a concrete truck in there to like pour the concrete in the ICFs? Because the ICF building is, I think he could do himself.
sure.
And then, unless there's no access for a truck.
So ICFs are expensive, and maybe the consideration of the pressure treated foundation wall is to save money. So that could be a drawback.
Yeah.
But poured concrete, it's surprisingly affordable concrete foundations. I mean, you're going to pay a premium
You're
for
just
this.
talking about a slab, right?
No, I'm talking about
full
he wa-
basement.
Yeah, he wants
That's
a
right.
room
That's
down
right.
there.
I
I
forgot.
would tell him to consider something else if he didn't want the room down there, like helical piles, and then build on that.
Yeah.
You're a fan of those, huh?
I think they're great.
Yeah.
All right, this comes from Mike. Hey, FHB podcast. I have a heating and probably cooling question, although I don't have central air conditioning. I've listened to your show for several years now and know that if this has been discussed, or maybe I just missed it. In my Chicago apartment, my wife and I have forced air heat. When we leave for the day, we set the thermostat at 60, and the first one home raises it to 70. When we go to bed, we turn the temp down to 65. While manually changing the temperature isn't ideal, we rent, so swapping the thermostat for a new setback model isn't an option. My question is generally, does it take more energy to bring the apartment up to 70 after it being 60 for the whole day versus setting the daytime temp to, say, 65? If no one is home, should we set the daytime temperature even lower? If we did have a central AC system, would the opposite be true? Thanks for all the great info you guys put out, and keep up the good work. So this is an age-old question. Does setting back the thermostat and then raising it later in the day use more energy than if you would have left it alone and let the house stay at a constant temperature? And there are some definitive answers for this. There is research that says, yes, setting your thermostat back almost always saves energy, but there are a few caveats there. This research done by Michael Blasnick over a number of years, and he looked at all kinds of different houses with all kinds of different heating systems, but generally speaking, if you have a single stage heating appliance and conventional construction, yes, it saves money to turn down your thermostat when you're not at home.
Yeah. That makes sense to me.
Because you're not using those BTUs to keep the place warm, but also there is less thermal drive when the temperature of the interior house gets to be closer to the outside temperature.
Right.
So if it gets to be 60, heat wants to move
From hot to cold.
hot to cold. It wants to move less.
Right. So the delta T drops.
Right.
And the drive outward drops.
Right. And similarly, in a cooling climate or in the summertime, same thing. If you let the house get warmer, closer to the outside temperature, there's less heat flow. The caveats are if you have a mini split or a modern high-end air handler style heat pump, right, with ductwork, and so here's the thing: variable refrigerant flow and variable speed compressors. Oftentimes, they will go into a ramp-up mode if you set them back significantly, and even they may turn on electric resistance heaters to keep up, and that'll definitely use more energy. So you got to, with some caveats. Yes, it'll save you money, but if you have modern high-tech heat pumps, maybe not.
Yeah.
In
your
his
own
Chicago
experiment.
apartment, probably does not.
So I was going to so tell me, how would you do that? It's hard to get enough days
It would.
with the same conditions to test.
Yeah, because you'd have to know basically the heating degree days over the period that you're testing each particular thing.
And you either need to do it for a really long time, or you
Right.
need to have days that were almost the same, close
exactly
together.
That's why, yeah,
Yeah.
in order to have that the data to actually compare apples to apples, you need to know. You need to have basically similar. Basically, you need to get your neighbors in on this. Hopefully, they have like the same. They're running on the same heating system, the same wall assembly in your apartment building, and then you have them do the setbacks. You don't do the setbacks, and then compare energy bills at the end of the year or whatever.
This is what Matt would do.
It sounds a little complicated to me, but
you need to rent 2 apartments.
it could be. I say you heat half of the place with setbacks and half without.
I don't know if that would.
That's not going to
That
work
doesn't
either,
sound
right?
like a good
Yeah.
plan.
So don't mess with your mini splits, but generally speaking, yes, it's fine. Set back. I'm the setback thermostat in my house. I turn the thing up and down all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I turn it down when the people are in there. It makes them sleepy and they don't talk to me as much. Doug from Colorado writes, after watching the podcast with Steve Basic from the Builder Show, I was struck by the conflict between best practice and what the home buyer can afford. Steve spoke about the long-term value of high-end materials. I don't doubt that is true, but how does that help the buyer who can barely afford a basic code-built house? Is the industry saying that the only affluent people can have a new home? Even in parts of the country that used to be more affordable, the median home price has risen to a level that excludes the average wage earner. Yes, Doug, I'm with you, man.
Yeah.
This is something I'm always railing against. I don't have an answer for this dilemma, but I feel it's a topic that needs more discussion by the building industry. A high-performance house is useless if you can't afford it.
Right. Excellent point.
Yeah.
So
Another age-old, well, I don't know how old, but it's an ongoing struggle, right?
So here's something I dug into, right? So the median home price in 1970 was about $7,400.
Wow.
Adjusted for inflation, excuse me, for 2019, that same house would have been about $45,000.
Yeah, which is crazy.
So you guys know what the median home price is
Here?
nationwide?
No.
It's
Like what's the range?
it's over $235,000, 236.
Yeah.
So
I would have thought lower.
that's actually more than I paid for my house.
It's a little less than I paid for mine, but
It's a whole lot more than I paid for mine.
So it's also 5 times the 1970 median cost. So I think the affordability thing is very real. It's not a theoretical problem.
right. What's driving those costs up?
So when we were talking to the economist from Home Advisor, do you remember his name, Jeff?
No, not Misha.
Misha.
Misha, yeah.
Misha was saying that it's big builders and builders say it's regulation. It's so hard to develop parcels now that's what's affecting it. I don't know that that's entirely the case. I think there's probably a shortage of homes in every segment. So if that's the case, I think people have to build more expensive homes to cover their costs. Builders I'm talking about, developers.
Yeah, that's probably true. I mean, land is expensive. I
Way.
don't know how much land cost back then, and I don't know if that's being calculated into those like home costs. You know, is that $235 including the price of land?
The land, I think
is
so.
that like the sale?
Yeah,
you know, the sale
I think that's the price.
Yeah. So I mean, real estate prices just for bare land are pretty expensive, at
Yeah,
least
they
around
are.
here.
Yeah, they are.
So to that point, I went looking on the Realtor.com site yesterday for homes around Newtown to see like where the entry point was, and it's more than $200,000. That's the entry point. And the
It's
only thing,
Newtown, though.
yeah,
I
but
mean,
the
yeah.
only thing that so
It's a pretty wealthy community.
that's part of the problem is that like where there are jobs and
Right.
people like still need to live there,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And building affordable houses in the middle of nowhere doesn't help.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in the middle of nowhere. You've been near me.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still dirt roads around
Yeah.
around me.
Yeah.
And I have the cheapest house in my development. And there's nothing. I mean, I got to drive almost 15 miles to the nearest grocery store.
Yeah. You pay for that.
Yeah. I mean, it's just crazy to me.
What do you guys think of the pretty good houses part of the solution here? I reached out
So
to
they're still expensive.
I know.
mean, like,
I
that's
reached
a
out to Mike
problem.
about that just to get a sense of, because I realized that cost comparisons is not something that comes up a lot. Like, code minimum house versus a pretty good house. Like, what are the costs associated? Like, what's the difference? So he talked a lot about energy modeling, of course. So
Yep.
I kind of wanted to share something that
Please.
he gave a recent scenario, it's a real life scenario that he did some modeling for a client. So the house is 2,000 square feet, a little over 2,000 square feet in climate zone 6A. That's Maine. If built to code minimum, but with efficient mini splits for heating and cooling, modeling shows that the cost would be about $3,000 per year for all energy costs. So building the pretty good house standard saves about $550 per year in energy costs. So my estimate for the code minimum to pretty good house is $16,000. If the code minimum version included central air or fully ducted heating system, reaching pretty good house could be as little as $5,000 upcharge. This suggests that the pretty good house standard might cost 1 to 2% of construction costs. He recognizes that most people, he said, for people who cannot do the 1 or 2% to spend on a new house more, then maybe you can't build a pretty good house. But he lists a few ideas, and these are just a couple things that you could do to save costs. Shrink the square footage from say 2,400 to 2,350.
That is clearly something that has raised that median.
Yeah.
I didn't look to see what the median home size was in 1970, but I know it was way less than what the median new home size is now.
2,400 square feet or so.
Yeah,
24.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is a lot of space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you're paying for that, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a no-brainer, right?
Right.
So, but I'm not sure that the pretty good house addresses the fundamental problem,
Of affordability.
if you can't afford even the cheapest house, can you? I mean, and unfortunately, the mortgage industry very seldomly gives credit for people of moderate means who are going to have lower utility bills. There's no calculus.
But those programs do exist.
Yes.
You're right. There are not a lot of them, but you can get energy efficient mortgages.
What do you think the premium on that is?
I have no idea. I mean, I haven't looked into that, but I guess I think of it as sort of the bridge. He's asking for a house that performs well, but also
It's cheap.
It's cheap, right? So I think that's what the pretty good house is going for. I'm not saying it's there because it's such a new concept, but you guys don't see it as the link.
I think we need more affordable housing, and
but not cheap housing. I mean,
No.
cheap, inexpensive, but not cheaply built, right?
let's call it high performance, inexpensive housing.
Yeah.
That's a high bar.
Yeah. But that's probably the energy codes that are probably part of what these people are saying are contributing to the high cost of housing.
Do you think they think that
I think that's part of the
efficiency
regulation that they're
measures
talking
are
about.
costing them money?
I think that may be part of the regulation that they're talking about. Yeah.
That wouldn't surprise me. The stuff that's in the code, though, is not expensive. I mean, maybe it is to a production builder who's used to doing things a certain way, but they're not crazy things.
But every little thing adds up.
Yeah.
If you have to have R49 in the ceiling where, 30 years ago you only had to have
19.
R19.
Yeah, I get it.
That's pretty expensive.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the
I
answer
know,
is.
there's no answer.
But
That's the
interestingly,
problem.
we heard from architect Joel Vanderweel,
Oh yeah, that guy.
and I'm going to read what Joel wrote. Dear FHB podcast crew, I'm a recent convert to the Fine T-Stud debate podcast. This is... And I'm thoroughly enjoying. I've been working my way through the back catalog whenever I go to the gym, so it's been a slow going. As an architect and newbie homeowner / landlord, it's fun to learn about all the things I've messed up along the way, as well as things to avoid in the future. Flat roofs, Justin. Irregularly shaped gazebos, Matt. Low VOCs, adhesives, Justin. You've also had a number of conversations about right-sized housing, which is something our firm thinks about a lot. There's obviously a great need for starter home type housing, but what can we do about it? As architects, the people who can afford to hire a professional to design a custom home are rarely looking for something small and simple. Yes.
So true.
One strategy we're experimenting with is something we're calling the side hustle house. And if nothing else, this product, this home plan has got the best name.
Right.
It's sometimes it's all it takes.
Yeah. It's perfect for the gig economy.
Yeah, totally. I
It's
think
a
that's the
cheap set
idea,
of
right?
house plans for a starter home specifically designed to support alternative means of making some supplementary income, renting a room out, using the extra space for your side job, etc. The plans include details for a 2-bedroom base house as well as optional additions that can be added later or as your budget allows. This is a totally new thing for us that we hope catches on. I'd be curious to hear what you all think architects and builders can and should be doing to encourage greater production of small, simple, quality homes that will last. Well, design small, simple, quality homes that will last is what I would say.
Yeah.
I.e. the pretty good house.
So I love this little house.
Yeah, I do too.
The side hustle house is
Side hustle.
a little box, and to make it more interesting, it has applied rakes on the gable ends that make it look like that the second story is a pair of shed dormers, but in reality, I think those are applied rakes. So it gives that illusion, but maintains all the square footage and doesn't have the air barrier problems of shed dormers.
That was the thing I couldn't tell because the roof line seems to extend out below those dormers out to the...
I think that's applied too.
Okay.
And then there's a couple of there's like a shed lean-to that you could put on the sides, and there's also like an addition you could put on the back. And I believe the plans include the drawings for those additions as well. And I looked at a plan set. I think it was $400, which is pretty affordable for an architect, a good set of architecturally designed house plans.
Yeah, that you could just bring to your code official to have sign off and start building.
The house is really cute,
Yeah.
and I think that's part of the solution.
Yep.
Yeah.
What the applied rakes is something that immediately struck me because in Pittsburgh, around the turn of the century, there was this developer by the name of Holly. I don't know what his first name is, but he was an engineer by trade and started building affordable housing in city neighborhoods. And they all had these applied rakes to make them more interesting. And it was like a blast from the past to see this house with this detail.
Yeah, I don't know what I think about it.
I can tell you as a builder, you'd hate it.
Yeah.
It's
Why,
very
what does it entail?
Well, so you have to roof that silly little 12 or 14-inch wide piece of roofing that doesn't do anything, and then you have to flash it all.
Yeah.
So it's like a carpenter is going to just scratch his head, but it does make the place look a lot better. What do you think about the design?
I love it. I like it a lot. I think it's got lots of interest to it, and it's just a little box, really.
Right. And I think that's how you
Most efficient
keep
form.
houses affordable, is
Exactly.
make them simple, make
Yep.
them easy to build,
Yep.
make people want them.
Have 2 sidewalks. As they have.
They do. But so I think that in the drawing
But
we're looking at,
the
that
idea is probably for a private entry.
or an ADU.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it has its own entry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Probably.
I mean,
yeah.
that's the whole side hustle thing, right? He's trying to make it a space that you can use, somebody else could use.
Right.
So you're living in like the main house
Yeah.
and somebody else is living in the shed dormer or shed side.
Yeah.
Okay.
On the side.
Yeah.
That's the hustle part.
Okay.
I also like the fact that it's got lots of colors on it. That helps too, make it more interesting. Right?
So if you all want to learn more about this, I'll put the link to their architectural firm's webpage. It's Union Studio ARCH.com. Union Studio Architecture, I presume.
They have a lot of beautiful work.
Yeah.
They do commercials too.
And God bless them for like trying to, make stuff that people can afford.
Yeah.
You guys have anything to add?
Never.
Done.
You always have something to add. I would, reconsider.
After the fact.
Okay.
Show notes.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks to Kylie, Matt, and Jeff for joining me, and thanks to all of you for listening, and thanks for enduring my congested head, all of you, including those
Been
here.
painful.
Please remember to send your questions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please, I'm going to ask, so Ben Strano told me that he gets a uptick in comments when he plaintively asks for comments. So please, if you all would kindly leave a comment on YouTube or however you're listening, it will help other folks find our podcast.
Boy, that was some puppy dog eyes you got there.
Trying really hard. Please, please, please. I'm dying here. You can tell Mike Cheskadesh, just leave a comment. Thanks to everybody for listening. Happy building.